Dark questions, chilling answers. Welcome to Shadow Theories. Today, we journey beneath the scenic beauty of America's most famous national park to uncover a threat of planetary scale. What if the Yellowstone Supervolcano erupted tomorrow? For most of us, Yellowstone is a postcard-perfect landscape of geysers, hot springs, and roaming bison. But beneath the forests and rivers lies something far more terrifying. A supervolcano, one of the largest and most dangerous on Earth. Scientists call it the Yellowstone Caldera, colossal chamber of molten rock, stretching 45 miles across. It hasn't had a major eruption in 640,000 years, and it's still very, very much alive. So, what would happen if it decided to wake up? It would begin quietly. A series of tremors under the park, almost unnoticeable at first. Animals would behave strangely, fleeing the area in a silent, instinctual exodus. Then, the ground itself would swell, literally rising several feet as magma surges toward the surface. Within hours, seismic networks across the globe would light up like a Christmas tree. The United States Geological Survey would issue urgent coded bulletins. Yellowstone is moving. And then the first explosion. A column of ash and fire punching 30 miles into the sky, eclipsing the sun. Daylight would turn to an eerie, perpetual twilight. Air traffic across the continent would grind to a halt. From Wyoming to Colorado, millions would watch the horizon burn, a terrifying preview of the main event. And then the mountain blows. A single, cataclysmic blast, 1,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens. The entire caldera collapses in on itself, triggering a magma surge of unimaginable proportions. Billions of tons of molten rock and ash are ejected into the atmosphere, fanning out across the continent. Cities like Denver and Salt Lake City would simply vanish, buried beneath feet of suffocating ash. The Great Plains, America's breadbasket, would become an apocalyptic wasteland, a gray desert where nothing grows. Within hours, the colossal ash plume would begin to circle the globe. Temperatures would plummet. The sun would become a dim, hazy memory. The rain that falls would be acidic, poisoning rivers and soil. Crops would fail on a massive scale. The planet would enter what scientists call a volcanic winter. The immediate aftermath would be chaos. Airports worldwide would close, their runways buried, their engines clogged. Satellites would fail, knocked out by the static charge in the ash cloud, severing global communications. Power grids would collapse under the weight of the fallout. Within days, supply chains would die. Supermarkets would be stripped bare, and then the panic would begin. In less than a week, food shortages would spread from continent to continent. Air temperatures could plummet by as much as 15 degrees. Harvests would fail across North America, Europe, and Asia, triggering a domino effect of famine and societal breakdown. This wouldn't just be an American disaster. It would be a global one. Some experts estimate that up to 5 billion people could die from starvation and cold within the first year alone. The survivors would face a new, brutal world, defined by dark skies, choking air, and frozen fear. So, could we stop it? Scientists monitor Yellowstone constantly. They track every tremor, every gas emission, every millimeter of ground deformation. But could we actually prevent an eruption if we saw it coming? Some have proposed drilling into the magma chamber to release pressure, a plan once quietly studied by NASA. The idea is to siphon off heat using vast quantities of water, effectively cooling the system down. But drilling into a supervolcano is like trying to disarm a planet-sized bomb. One mistake, one miscalculation, and we could trigger the very catastrophe we are trying to prevent. Others have suggested even more extreme solutions, like detonating nuclear weapons underground to fracture the rock and relieve pressure. But the energy required would be beyond anything humanity can safely control. The truth is, we can't stop it. We can only watch. How would humanity react? Governments would scramble. Mass evacuations would be ordered. But where would people go? There's nowhere on Earth that would be safe from the fallout. Within days, borders would slam shut. National economies would collapse. And misinformation, fueled by fear, would spread faster than the ash itself. Some would call it the end times, a divine judgment. Others would blame secret government experiments, climate engineering gone wrong, or even an extraterrestrial attack. Society would fracture, splitting between those desperately seeking physical safety and those searching for meaning in the chaos. The long winter would set in. The fine ash and sulfur aerosols blocking the sun would linger in the atmosphere for years, maybe even decades. This would cool the planet by up to 10 degrees Celsius, drastically shifting ocean currents and weather patterns. It would take generations for the Earth to recover, for the sun to shine clearly again. It would take even longer for humanity to regrow its crops, rebuild its infrastructure, and piece together what's left of civilization, if it could at all. So, could this really happen? Scientists are quick to point out that a full-scale supereruption is an extremely rare event, happening roughly once every 600,000 to 700,000 years. Statistically, we're about due. However, smaller eruptions and violent hydrothermal explosions are far more common and happen much more frequently. The magma chamber beneath the park is refilling. The pressure builds with every passing century. The clock is ticking, very, very slowly. And though the odds of it happening in our lifetime are low, the consequences are absolute, because Yellowstone isn't just a volcano. It's a planetary reset button. This leads to a deeper, more unsettling fear. What if supervolcanoes are nature's way of cleansing the slate? A built-in defense mechanism against any civilization that grows too powerful, too dominant. Maybe every intelligent species in the universe eventually faces its own Yellowstone, its own inevitable reset. A great filter written not in silence, but in fire. If Yellowstone erupted tomorrow, humanity wouldn't vanish in an instant, but our age of dominance would be over. We'd be forcefully reminded that for all our science, for all our technology, we are merely guests on a volatile planet that can reclaim itself in a single fiery day. So tonight, When you look up and see the calm, beautiful glow of a sunset, take a moment to remember what burns beneath your feet. Dark questions, chilling answers. This is Shadow Theories. If you survived this story, hit that subscribe button and dare to watch our next episode, where we ask, what if time glitches prove reality is broken? The shadows are waiting.